The Paul Leslie Hour, helping people tell their stories. And now, your host, Paul Leslie.
Hey, it's me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be able to welcome you to the Paul Leslie Hour, episode number 300. I'm excited to introduce Robert Earl Keen. He is one of the foremost voices in the world of Americana music, a singer, songwriter, distinguished performer with thousands of live shows to his credit. He's also a prolific recording artist. As a songwriter, he writes solo, but he's also co-written with some of the greats, including Lyle Lovett, Fred Koller, Dean Dillon, just to name a few. Some great artists have covered his work, from George Strait, Lyle Lovett, Nanci, Griffith, the legendary supergroup the Highwaymen. He is also a podcast host. He hosts the Americana Podcast. It's a great honor to welcome a man called an Americana Cult Hero. Welcome, Robert Earl Keen. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Paul. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, it's an honor.
Mm-hmm.
You're a very busy man. You do a lot of things. And a relentless touring schedule. What would you say motivates you?
Well, I'm always struggling to, do this better all the time. I'm not a perfectionist by nature, but I am a solution-oriented person, and I'm always trying to make things better, not only for, the show and the songwriting, but, even my family and all my friends and associates. So I don't know really where to stop, Paul. So I just keep going, trying to make things, better in a general, universal way.
I've listened to your podcast, the Americana Podcast, and one thing that has eluded me, and maybe other people as well, how would you define what Americana means? How would you define the style of what you do?
I define it as something that, as a form of music that really springs from the kitchen table. Sitting down, playing a song with your friends, writing a song, throwing in a few extra lines, maybe somebody else steps up. I mean, if you were making a play, it would be, the kitchen table in the middle of the scene, and one person would walk out with a guitar and start strumming it, and then as things go along, you would just keep adding the different pieces of the puzzle until it becomes like one song, and at that point, you have this really, truly grassroots, homegrown piece of music, whereas other music a lot of times is formed by, groups of people. It's usually, so Americana generally starts from the single mind.
You are a singer-songwriter with Texas roots, and maybe some of the listeners would have a certain image that would be conjured because of that. Do you think it's possible, being a singer-songwriter from Texas, to get pigeonholed?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I knew from the very beginning when I first started touring, I played a few shows, open mic nights, sort of thing in Austin, Texas. I was living in Austin and working for the state. I had an 8-to-5 job, and I'd run out of there at 5 o'clock and go play any place that I could play for basic tips, and set up my little PA system and play for tips, or I would show up at an open mic night later on that night and play a couple of songs there and worked that way. But I realized, because Austin is such an incredibly fertile music ground, you could see that there are people that had just started like me, but there were also people that had been there for years, and they were incredible musicians or incredible songwriters or incredible guitarists, and they hadn't moved anywhere, and it became immediately apparent that you had to get out. I mean, I read somewhere that you can't be a hero in your own backyard. So I wanted to get out of my backyard, and before I even knew it, the first thing I did was booked a show in Chicago at the Old Town School of Folk Music and played up there And from then on, I knew that I had to get out in the world. So the reality of the situation is I knew that I had to step out of that Texas, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings sort of, thinking, and it still, follows me around, and I still sort of, I have to tell people, no, I go all over. I live in a little bitty town here in the Hill Country in Kerrville, Texas, and people all the time say, man, we know you do some great stuff for the community and you play around here every now and then, but do you ever play outside of Kerr County? I go, oh yeah, I play over in Kendall County and Gillespie County, and I play in Menard County and Tom Green County. I play in all the counties, the surrounding counties. And they go, Are you joking with me? I'm like, no, I'm telling you the truth.
On that note, you mentioning, this show that you booked in Chicago, and if anyone wants to check the website, robertearlkeen.com, coming to a city near you. Would you say that traveling changes a person?
No, absolutely. Does traveling change a person? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on the downside, let's start with the downside. The downside is you become extremely isolated. I ride around, about 80% of our shows are coming out of that bus that I ride around in. So I'm going from town to town in a bus, and you think that you might get to see a lot, but you see bits and pieces, but mostly what's happening is you're isolated in a cultural way. Like you don't really, I get really disconnected with, what the music of the day is, what the news is, what movies are important, what's going on Broadway, and things like that. And unless I, am picking up some magazines or some newspapers when I'm walking out of a motel, I'm really disconnected with the rest of the country. But on the other side, I know how beautiful different places are. And when somebody says, Asheville, North Carolina, I just start going, oh my God, just gushing about what a beautiful place this is, or what's going on in the Northwest. And you're like, well, here's the deal. In Oregon and the geography on the western side, it's raining all the time, and always people think that it's raining. But if you go to the eastern side of Oregon, it's this beautiful desert with like 6 kinds of topography within 100 miles. So it's, I know all those things, and they're all little treasures that I have that I know when somebody starts talking about their hometown or some of their favorite places, I can just feel right at home stepping in and talking about it.
Something about so many of your songs, from my position as the listener, I can listen to some of the songs and it's almost like a movie. Mm-hmm. And the characters, I can see them. I can imagine this one, he's a little pudgy. Mm-hmm. This, and I'm curious, when you're writing these songs, do you see the characters in your mind?
Yes, Paul. I'm very visual as a writer. As a matter of fact, almost all of my songs start with some kind of setting. I have to create a setting to create the characters to move the story along. So for me, the first order of business I've written all kinds of songs, so it's crazy. But if I'm just talking about, the songs that I sit down and comfortably write, my first order of business is creating the setting. Where are we? Like I said earlier, okay, we're at the kitchen table in the middle of a theater, right? On stage in the middle of the theater, and you take it from there and you start adding pieces to it until it becomes, one picture. And then you start adding characters and create the story from there, and the story moves on. And then it goes to some logical end. I mean, you can pick any ending you want to, but it's the logical end that I like. So I create songs by creating a setting.
Very interesting. What would you say stokes the flames of the inspiration for you? What would you say is your greatest well of inspiration?
Solitude, I would say. So when I want to really dig down and write what I would consider something that not necessarily is hasn't been said before, but something that to me has a poignant perspective and that has some meaning for myself. And so to be able to do that, I really need to be by myself and start with that nugget. Now, that being said, there are times when I'll write a few lines or about a half of a song or something and realize that I'm kind of stuck, and I'll put it down, and I might bring it back later like I might be sitting around the bus and think, I need to finish this song. From there, I can finish something. But that nugget, like you're talking about, that magical stone that's living there in my brain or in my soul, that comes from solitude.
Another thing that strikes me about a lot of your songs, it's not every songwriter that you can be as entertained reading the lyrics on a page as you are listening to the music. And there's a lot of your songs that translate into almost like prose. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping you can tell us, what role has literature had in your writing?
I've always been a reader, not as voracious as, say my wife or some of my friends, but I'm always reading some books, got something that I'm kind of into at the time. But other than that, I was an English major at Texas A&M University, and that was a great part of my life as far as like learning about literature and being exposed to different forms of literature and different perspectives. And so when I think about writing a song, somehow it translates to the fact that a lot of the literature that I read, going back to being very visual, were things that were very visual to me. And let's say Coleridge's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is if you read about that and read that poem, it's extremely visual and beautiful and tragic at the same time. And then, and so most of the literature that I read that I really liked had to do with things that, stirred my imagination. And so consequently, I think I've just, in some ways the torch has been passed to me to take up that effort to stir one's imagination.
Something about your audience that I've noticed is you could encounter someone who's very young. You could encounter someone who's very reserved and older. There's a lot of variety in your audience, but have you noticed any commonality in your fans?
That's a good question. Well, other than the fact that they love, music, songwriter-oriented music or singer-songwriter music in general, most of them, have some experience with that. There are quite a few that just, heard, that I was, that people liked going into my show. And that, that just, the commonality there is people want to come to a good show and be entertained. I believe, like someone once said, that what I do is entertainment with a big E and art with a little A. And so I'm out there to try to, entertain people when I'm on stage. When I'm writing, I'm kind of a different mindset. But when I'm on stage, I feel like it is the entertainer's job to entertain. And, I love to be entertained as much as anyone. So, I go to see other people and I'll go, a little flat, or, oh, this is fun. Oh, this person ought to continue with this line right here. This is really, really happening. And so I like entertainment. So I want to get out there, and I don't want to waste anybody's time. I want them to enjoy it, and I want me to enjoy it as well.
As I was mentioning at the beginning of the interview, you've written with some great writers. Uh-huh. Who would you like to write with that you haven't yet?
Sade, that would be.
Really?
Yeah, that's my that's my dream writer that I would like to write with. And that's because I think she's underrated as a writer, and I think her songs are incredibly beautiful and somewhat heartbreaking. I love this beautiful darkness that she has. And, most of her songs are songs that she wrote. So, when you listen to those songs, you hear, you hear common themes and threads. And I just always, from the first time I ever got kind of hip to her, I started saying, man, I would like to write with that person. So that would be someone that would be my dream fantasy to write with. Someone that I might, write with that would be more realistic would be, I don't know, somebody like Neil Young. I'd love to write with Neil Young. I think he has a certain simplicity to his thing, and then as well some beautiful color there. So I'd like to, at least have the chance to sit down.
I have to say, I never would have thought Sade would have been the first part, but now that I'm thinking about it, something that you've always kind of done is the unexpected. I remember hearing certain tracks and thinking, wow, that's so cool. Who would have thought to have a saxophone there? But man, does that sound great. Mm-hmm. And unexpected, but in a very entertaining way. Mm-hmm. So on the note of unexpected, is there any mode of expression that you plan to attempt that you haven't yet?
Oh, Paul, right now, my hands are so full that I'm even scared to even venture out into that world. But I mean, to be honest, I'd say I would really like to get involved in writing some kind of, Broadway musical. I'd love to write in a musical sense, like the way musical songs are put together, where they're complex and they're speaking to the audience constantly from the beginning to the end, and it's not something that you're supposed to sit there and sort of absorb as a song and say, oh, this is a beautiful, beautiful song here, that it almost attacks you in its presence, and you have to either get with it, or maybe you don't like it, but the fact is it's right there for you to just grab onto. So I love that, and I love the format of Broadway musical songs. They're complex. They'll have a verse, chorus, bridge, channel, chorus, back to some aside, some speaking thing, and it's just like fun. It looks just like this is the kind of thing that I'd love to, try.
Fascinating. Would you ever make a Robert Earl Keen jazz album?
I don't. This is the kind of question I would say that's like my thought about like working in prose. I love prose, and I like to be, write, short stories or that kind of thing, novel, that kind of thing. But I have so much respect for the people that do it well. I would never insult them. So I would have to say no. I would have to say no on the jazz question.
With the number of songs that you've written in all different formats, bluegrass, some that are like spoken word, really, would it be possible to pick a song from your discography that you think best presents you, or that if you could present it to, if you had the opportunity to present it to a mass of people, you would?
Mm-hmm. You mean best represents me as a songwriter, or best represents my personal, my inner person?
As a songwriter.
As a songwriter. Yeah, the song, Not a Drop of Rain, which was covered by Sean Colvin a couple of years ago, is a song that is a bit sleepy, but as far as like its tone, the way the words fit together, the way the narrative works out from being very still to almost sort of storm-like, it's a song that I wish more people heard, or more people even said, would attribute to me, because it's probably one of my, as far as being proud of a song for what it is, it would be probably right up there at the very top.
On that note, with the Sean Colvin cut, could you say who did the best performance or recording of a Robert Earl Keen song?
There was a band. It just shocked me. It's so funny. I got this record, and it was by a band called Cry, 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 and it was Lucy Kaplansky, Dar Williams, and Richard Schindel. All East Coast, all people, Northeast people, that had really good careers up there, and they were mostly really, you would consider them folk artists. And they had this, I guess they only had the one album, but anyway, the band they put together was called Cry, Cry, Cry. And someone sent me a CD several years ago of that particular band, and I'm looking on the back of it, looking at the titles to the song, which is something that I always do. I think titles really do, tell you what you're dealing with in a song or a songwriter. And so I'm looking at this record, and I see, cut number 5, it says Shades of Grey, and I think, oh, that's funny, I've got this song called Shades of Grey, that's pretty interesting. And then I just tossed it on the desk and didn't do anything. And so, one day, when I'm in between talking on the phone and trying to figure out the next gig that I'm, how we're going to get there, I pick up this record and I look at that song again. I think, let's see what this sounds like. And I put it in this player, and it was my song. And it was this fantastic version of this song. And these guys were really great players and great singers. And it totally blew me away. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Someone that you've performed many shows with and written with, we mentioned Lyle Lovett.
Uh-huh.
Who is Lyle when you get to know him?
He is a very thorough and heartfelt human being, and he is extremely intellectually curious, and curious just by nature. And so what you would be surprised at is how much he would be willing to find out about you and your life. He's very interested in other people and talking to other people, and he has this incredibly encyclopedic knowledge of all the people he met. I mean, he's almost like the mythical, say, famous politician who knew everybody's name from his first grade teacher to somebody he just met 10 minutes ago. And he has this amazing ability to remember people and remember their stories. So he's, always surprising to me. I've known him for about 40 years. So I'm always surprised at how he remembers these things and how curious he is about people in their lives.
What about you? What would we be surprised to know about Robert Earl Keen?
That as much as I put out on records about a wild and colorful life, that I'm basically, pretty tame. I mean, I guess pretty tame compared to people I know in my family, right? But I'm a lot more about home and family than anybody knows. I have a couple of girls and my wife, and I would do anything to make sure that they're doing their best and doing okay. That's not mean that that doesn't mean that I put them in a place where they're on a pedestal or anything. I'm always just trying to help them as much as I can, as far as having a good family and being in our lives. So that's, family man, I would say that would be unusual for some people.
What is the best thing about being Robert Earl Keen?
Lately, Paul, I have a bit of celebrity, so I'm always and I've always walked around this world, thinking that I was somewhat invisible, and so, I run into people all over this place, hey, Robert Earl, I saw you at this and this and that. So it's, kind of cheers me up. I kind of feel like I'm not so invisible anymore. So that would be probably the best thing.
Well, I should tell you this. It was about maybe 8-9 years ago. I was the guest on a radio show, and it was a call-in show. And I'll never forget this lady's voice. I'm not making fun of her, but she had such a very precise way of speaking. And she didn't say hello, and I didn't say hello. The moment we had a connection, and I guess she heard that click, she said, "Have you ever considered interviewing Robert Earl Keen?" And I wonder if she's listening to this. But that was 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So I guess to that lady, the answer is yes and yes. But I always like to give my guests the stage. Let them just address the audience. There are people listening from all over.
Right.
What would you say to anyone who is tuned in?
Tuned in. Oh, okay. To the show right now?
Yeah.
I would say that, you know, my life is about being out there in the world and entertaining people and being entertained. And if they've seen a show or they've never seen a show, I would really invite them to come to a show, because I think that, like I said earlier, I struggle all the time to make it better and better. And I think at this point in my life, thousands of shows, you know, in my back pocket, and, you know, plenty of work, plenty of songs to go to and use as, you know, my treasure chest to throw out there to the world. And I change my set list every day, every night. Well, I would want them to come to a show. That would be my, you know, that's the best thing that I can do in this life is try to make people enjoy their lives for, you know, that 2 hours that I'm on stage.
And if anyone wants to do that, there are tour dates up on robertearlkeen.com, robertearlkeen.com. So my last question, how do you define Robert Earl Keen? Who is Robert Earl Keen?
Wow, that's a tough one. You know, Paul, I always think that it's easier to define other things outside oneself than to define oneself. And I don't, you know, I really don't know. I would have to just say I'm pretty much like everybody else. I'm, you know, walking around this earth, putting my pants on one leg at a time and trying my best to do the right thing. So I think to be able to try to be objective about me, I would have to say that I'm trying to do my best like anyone else.
Mr. Keen, thank you very much for your participation in this show. Thank you for being the guest for episode number 300.
Wow, congratulations.
It's an honor to talk to you.
It's an honor to talk to you, Paul. Thank you for having me on your show. This is really exciting.
My pleasure. All right, sir. Well, I'll be in the audience when you're at the Variety Playhouse in Atlanta.
Ah, great. So, one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's quite a place, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great one. I love the Variety.
All right, sir.
All right.
Well,
thank you, Paul.
Thank you. See you down the road.
All right, sir. Bye-bye.
Zapabi papa do nakajiba loop dikis on the gujia the kasagika like a pina say the bocheki ye keep on king cockatee con kitty donkey boot be like a tourist con de live on goodbye.